Hello, my friends, and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Well, I think it's time to make a little summary of what's going on in Ukraine. How did we get here from 1991? Obviously, the issue in Ukraine did not start in February 24th, 2022. It started in 1991 with the collapse of the Soviet Union. Now, let's start with that one. So this video will be about my assessment of how we started, how it developed, and how did we get here, and where are we now. So 1991, the collapse of the Soviet Union. Just as a, how should I put it, food for thought, is that how you say it? 1991, when the Soviet Union collapsed, it did not collapse because it was unsustainable. So, my friends from the West who are, chest beating, yes, there was something to do with, armament and so on. But I think it was an understanding between the Soviet leaders, economic interests, and the United States of America. Okay, so take that into consideration. Nevertheless, the fact is the Soviet Union disintegrated, and that was, as Vladimir Putin said, probably the most the tragedy of the 20th century. Not because his empire collapsed, but because a lot of people were displaced. A lot of Russians were caught in other former Soviet socialist republics, and actually millions of people. And it was an economic tragedy in what was left after the Soviet Union collapsed. If you want to hear what exactly Putin said, it's still available on YouTube. So that's what happened in 1991. There was a lot of treaties and understandings between the leaders of one side and another one. What should they do with the nuclear weapons? Well, if you remember, in 1994, there was a little conference, I think in Budapest Memorandum, where they decided that Ukraine will be disarmed. It's not that the Ukrainians had a choice. Ukraine did not have a fucking choice. Ukraine had to do it because the guys in charge said, you're going to do this and we're going to guarantee your sovereignty under the current circumstances, which is neutrality. Remember that word, neutrality. That means Ukraine, as long as you're neutral, your sovereignty and independence will be guaranteed by Russia, United States, Great Britain, France, Germany, I think it was. So there were a bunch of countries. Remember the word, neutrality. Ukraine was left alone in its own, how should I put it, corruption until 2003. In 2013, I'm getting lost here. In 2013, there started to be some movements in Ukraine. Why? Because Ukraine, the legitimate government, which was democratically elected, of Viktor Yanukovych, decided to make a little economic deal with the Russian Federation instead of European Union. So he, being in power, Viktor Yanukovych and his government decided that Ukraine, which was independent, should choose to do some economic deals with the Russian Federation. As a free country, you should be allowed to do that. But the European Union / the Americans did not like that. And they started thinking, how can we overthrow this government of Viktor Yanukovych, who wants to go towards Russia economically, not towards Europe, like they had a say. Well, they did. That's how they thought. Besides, since 1991, actually 1994, the Americans, and it was James Baker, James Baker, he promised verbally to the Soviet, to the Russians at that time, it was no more Soviet Union, Russian, no expansion of NATO eastward 1 inch, verbally. It's in the transcripts of the conversation. Nothing signed, that's true, nothing signed. But how we sometimes say there's a gentleman understanding. You know what I mean? That I tell you I'm going to be there at midnight, I'll be there at midnight. I don't have to sign any papers because my word is my word. I don't have to say, I swear God, please believe me, blah, blah, blah. No, this is my word, this is it. I said it, it's a done deal. That's used to be between or among gentlemen. Well, the United States government was not a gentleman because they started extending eastward with its NATO and the European Union. Now you can say, well, just a second, each country is allowed to choose independently. Well, why not Ukraine? So, what happened in 2008? There was a summit, NATO summit in Bucharest, Romania, where George W. Bush, that illiterate guy who actually was at Yale and Harvard universities, Ivy schools, US Ivy schools, so that's fantastic. That proves to me how fantastic those schools are if they had George W. Bush, both of them, and they had Obama too, but leave him to the side for now. So they said in Bucharest that one day Georgia and Ukraine could join NATO, and Putin was, say what? Well, that was the last straw. Why? Until then, and since then, after 1991, until I can remember exactly what year, NATO expanded, I think, 5 times eastward. The gentleman promise or understanding was meant 0 for the Americans. And the Russians saw that. Russians told them, hey, what about that? What about that? Expanding towards us, it's not the right thing. Remember, the Warsaw Pact disintegrated, NATO remained. Why was NATO created? 2 reasons. Why? Soviet Union, the main one, and then the Warsaw Pact. Soviet Union no more, Warsaw Pact no more. They said, well, we're going to guarantee the European peace, the peace in Europe. But the enemy was Soviet Union and the Warsaw Pact. Soviet Union was gone, the Warsaw Pact was gone. So by normal conclusion, that should disintegrate itself, but it didn't. They decided, the Americans, they decided that they will use NATO as the police organization of this planet, which is whenever the American economic interests have an interest somewhere on this world, they will use either the US military or NATO to go over there and under a pretext or another, weapons of mass destruction, I don't think you wear your skirt short enough or something like this. This kind of rights are, violated there. This kind of policies are not good. You're violating this and you're violating that, like you are the referee. And remember, nobody voted for the United States of America to be the judge of this planet. Remember? But they said, well, I am. You know why? So, since 1991 till 2022, United States ran the world the way it knew best. By this, not by that. So, Pax Romana was invading bombarding Yugoslavia, Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, and Syria, to name a few. So this was the Pax Romana that is promised to us. No, thank you. In 2013, you have the now famous or infamous Victoria Nuland's phone conversation with then US ambassador to Kiev, saying that they were discussing who they will put in charge in Ukraine after the coup will occur in 2014, which it did. And remember that famous "fuck the European Union" from Victoria Nuland? Yes, Victoria Nuland is a Zelensky Stein too. Just a coincidence, I'm pretty sure. Anyway, like Madeleine Albright, coincidence, and like Zelensky, coincidence. It's okay. These are facts. Coincidence or not coincidence, I'm naming facts. Undeniable. So here you have it. 2014. A coup, a bloody coup, why? Because people died, was organized and spontaneously started in Kiev and so on. They overthrew through force, the legitimate democratically elected government of Viktor Yanukovych with the help of Democrat countries, free countries that tell us democracy and freedom should be respected, and sovereignty and national sovereignty and independence. So they immediately recognized the new guys in Ukraine, the guys who overthrew a legitimate government. Why? Because those guys were working for them. Now, at that point, the government that was not legitimate was not recognized by certain provinces in Ukraine, which was, Luhansk, Donetsk, and the Russian says, you know what, we're not going to let you do what you want to do over there in your country. We're going to go in Sevastopol and we'll see what the people say. They organized a referendum over there, and the referendum, the people voted that they will break away from Ukraine. Why? Because it was an illegitimate government in Ukraine supported by the West democratic countries. Okay? Now, when Donetsk and Luhansk said, you know what, we don't like you, Kiev regime, the guys sent tanks to get them in line. The guys defended themselves, and that's how the war started. Besides, I think there were some infringements on minorities' rights in Ukraine, which is the Russian language was infringed here, limited here, and so on, which is a violation of human rights. Okay, but hey, the democratic country said, nothing to see here. And then the war in Donetsk area and Donetsk, Luhansk. Do you know how many people died over there since 2014 until 2022? Civilians. Do you know? All right. There were killed about 10,000, between 10,000 and 14,000 civilians, according to sources. Some people say less. Nevertheless, one civilian is too much. So they were killed by the military, by the Ukrainian military. The guys that were voted into office after that were not voted by Luhansk, Donetsk, and Crimean Peninsula. Therefore, they are not legitimate. They don't speak for the whole Ukrainians. That's why Putin said many times that government in Kiev is illegitimate. First, it came through an usurpation of the legitimate government of Ukraine, Viktor Yanukovych, and then, he was not voted in office, any guy over there, by the entire Ukraine. Now, in 2014 and 2015, there were two Minsk agreements, which said they will institute their rule of law again. This will have Luhansk, Donetsk will have an autonomous, status within Ukraine, will be part of Ukraine, but they will be, in a part of Ukraine. Russian troops will not be in Ukraine. Ukraine will conduct elections and so on, will demilitarize, become neutral again, not Western oriented and owned. Remember, Germany and France were the guarantors of these agreements with Hollande, the president of France, and Merkel, the chancellor of Germany. They didn't care because together with then President Poroshenko of Ukraine, as they said later, we just bought time to arm Ukraine for Russia. Now they were conducted in Crimea, they were conducting a referendum in joining Russia, and they joined the will of the people that we like so much, said we're going to join Russia. As for instance in Kosovo, if you remember in 2008, the parliament of Kosovo decided, the parliament, not the people, the parliament decided we're going to just be independent, and we declared independence, recognized by about 100 plus minus countries. But hey, Crimea cannot do that. Well, in the meantime, the Ukrainians showed, and Zelensky got elected by whatever Ukraine was over there, as the president of Ukraine. He obviously appointed another Zelensky style, Mr. Zhmyhal, as a prime minister, and then Reznikov, Alexei Reznikov, the defense minister, another Zelensky style, and Yermak, another Zelensky style, as the chief of staff. So 4 little pigs in charge of Ukraine. Hey, that's their business. Ukraine love that. I guarantee you that. I know Ukrainians, and I know, not all of them, I know just a few. So I know how they feel about that. Nevertheless, it's okay. That's their country, right? So this guy Zelensky, if you remember, he got elected. His platform was, I'm going to make peace in Ukraine. He did the opposite. He said, I'm not going to implement the Minsk agreements. Fuck off. We're going to continue sharing one another. And then the Russians said, talk to the boss, which in United States of America, hey guys, you already trained the Ukrainians, already brought weapons in Ukraine. We cannot have that. You're too close. You're too close to us. You're too close. If NATO moves into Ukraine, you are going to minimize the distance, the time between your missiles towards our missiles located in Russia. That cannot happen. It's like Russia will deploy, let's say, missiles in Nicaragua or in Cuba or in Mexico or in Canada. United States will not allow that ever. They will nuke all these countries if that would be the case. I guarantee you that. But somehow the Russians had to do it because United States, in its 31 years of hegemony, they showed us that they lead by this, not by diplomacy and negotiation. I remember the United States got 4 points, 4 diplomatic ways of settling things. One is black threats. The second one, regime change. It's blackmail. The third one, regime change, and the fourth one is attack and invade the country. These were the 4 diplomatic tools of the United States of America. Why? Because they're tough. Remember, the lion does not negotiate for the gazelle that was caught by the lioness. No. They just go and get it. They don't negotiate. After they eat, they leave. The same United States. United States will not negotiate because it's the strongest. So they talk about rule-based world order. That is not a rule-based world order. When United States invades and bombs whomever they want, and everybody else have to follow those unwritten rules. Unwritten. So anyway, move on. The Russians try to discuss with the Americans. They say, NATO, guys, you're too close. Let's create, some, unlike the 1991, 1994 agreements, verbal agreements, no NATO there. The Russians said, you screwed us too much. So we're not going to do this again. We want some signatures from you guys that you will not do anything in Ukraine. Why? You're too close. And we have our interests over here, national interest. We're going to go to war if you don't do this. And I say, well, fuck off, do it. The Russian says, okay, we'll do it. The last attempt was in January 2022, December 2021, and January 2022. The Russians brought their guys over there and they invaded with about 3,000 or 400,000, so 300,000 to 400,000 people invaded. And they immediately got over there, got the, Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporozhye, and Kherson Oblast. They conducted democratically, referenda. And then those guys voted to join Russia. As Kosovo parliament decided to become independent. But hey, this is not fair. Over there it was fair. Why? Because over there it was organized and agreed by United States. Here it was not agreed by United States. Like United States has a say. You don't have any say. You're just another country. But the problem is, the United States of America thinks that they are the arbiters, self-appointed arbiters and police. So this is where we got. Now, the war started. The Russians are fighting in Ukraine with one pinky, about what? 600,000 people from a potential of about 40 million people. Remember, Russia has a population about what? 145 million people. And they fight with what? 600,000 people over there? Nevertheless, the front has stabilized. The Americans and the European vassal states pump weapons and pump money and whatever is needed to fight the Russians. The front stabilized, and that's where we are. Now, we have a little problem. A little problem because the Ukrainians will run out of people. The Russians will not run out of people before the Ukrainians. So, what's going on now? A situation happened in Israel. Now, obviously, Israel is the first. The second is Israel, the third is Israel, the fourth is Israel, the fifth is Israel, the sixth, maybe Ukraine. So now they all dropped Ukraine and everybody's focused on Ukraine, on Israel fighting an organization. Not a country, an organization. Now, if you look and you just Google, you just click a few clicks, you're going to realize that Israel, I think, is in about what? The first 6, 7 armies on this planet, supposedly. Also supposedly, which I think they have nuclear weapons, illegal, but hey, who's gonna check them, right? Yeah, but but Iran should be checked in its ass if possible. The same with Saddam, but Israel somehow no. All right, and people see this double standard. Nevertheless, now obviously Israel, and is not Israel is the prize. If Russia is the prize in Ukraine, and after Russia is China and the global hegemony, because India will be left alone, so it's going to be, yes sir, it's not going to fight Americans. So Russia is the prize. Russia resisted, they formed bigger, the BRICS expanded, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the Belt and Road, whatever organization in China had what, 130 countries over there, and the United States has what? G7, NATO, and that's it. So the United States remains with more or less 40 countries out of 195 on this planet. All right. So they will not get more or lose. Probably lose. They will use probably Turkey. They will use probably Hungary. They will use Slovakia and some other countries. They will say, "Opa, Al Capone is losing. We're gonna go on the other side because this guy is a tyrant." So that's where we are in Ukraine right now. Ukraine is dropped like a hot potato because now it's Israel, and not Israel, is Iran. Iran is the prize in over there in all this Hamas, blah, 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 Palestine, Palestinians, Israelis, Israel. No. That's what it is. That's a pretext to destroy Iran for interest. Now, to do that, they have to drop Ukraine. Ukraine is dropped. What's going to happen over there? I'm waiting for the front to break, the Russians to go over there. These guys say, okay, peace, Russia, we're focused in Iran. Once Iran is going to make a move, then the Ukrainians are going to probably say, we want peace. Why? Because the order from Al Capone is right here. So that's where we are right now. Israel will destroy whatever it needs to destroy in Gaza 100%. I'm going to make my next video regarding what's going on over there and what's the deal in the Middle East. So here we are, my friends, with the thing in Ukraine. Remember, the West thought that with its sanctions, it's going to kneel Russia economically, financially, and people will go over there and going to overthrow Putin, blah, 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 with the cells activated, another Maidan 2014 Ukraine. It did not happen because the Russians were ready. Because the Russians are smart. And Russians said, no, we're ready. And they were ready, nothing happened. On the contrary, these guys in Europe, including the idiots in Germany, they are fucked. They are going around the world right now trying to ask the Nigerians for natural gas. Unbelievable. Why? Because the Ukrainians are going to cut the transfer of Russian gas from Russia to Europe. Good job. You screwed yourself. Great. Why? Because Al Capone told you so. And you have no balls. And not only no balls, you have no independent foreign policy. You're not free. You're not sovereign. You pretend to be, but you're not. I'm talking about Germany and Europe in general, because the rest are just weasels. Great Britain thinks that is part of the leadership. No, Great Britain is just a lieutenant over there who lost its, unfortunately for them, their empire after they got bankrupt after the Second World War by that winner, Churchill, all right? And that's it. They won the war, but they went out, excluded from the leadership. They think that they are, but they're not. Sorry, my British friends, you are not. You lost it, but you still think you have it. Good. Good. It's good. That means false self-confidence. That's going to get you in big trouble. Remember, one bomb from Russia will clear you. But you're still yapping like the Baltic states. I'm not saying this to hurt Great Britain. This is a clear assessment. One bomb will clear Great Britain. Agree with me? And the bomb does not even have to hit Great Britain. It can be shot and released around Great Britain, and you're going to have a little big tsunami that's going to wipe the whole island in what? 2 hours? So you see, it's very vulnerable, this, I don't know, how they call it, paper tiger? What are you going to do? Send your 200 missiles to what? To Russia? You got to be kidding me. Anyway, my friends, here we are, waiting for Ukraine to collapse. Once Ukraine collapses, the Poles will come probably from the west and get their territory in Lviv. Remember, they claimed them. And they will do it in the name of peace and protection. The same probably the Hungarians will do, intervene in Zakarpattia and take their part, and the Romanians will not, will be like, America, what should we do? You just sit down and shut the fuck up. Da, bine. That's what's going to be the Romanians. You don't believe me? You'll see. They will not do shit. Alright, my friends, here it is, my little summary of what's going on in Ukraine. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just.